Welcome to We Talk Adoption and Fostering, the podcast by care experienced young people for other care experienced young people. I am Jamie.
And I'm Holly.
This is a space where we share our experiences and talk about important topics. This week we're talking about a personal subject, accessing your adoption records and searching for birth parents. We'll be sharing our own experiences on what can be an emotional and complex process. We're also joined by a special guest today, Lynsey, an adult adoptee, who will share her story and give us her unique perspective on this journey. To kick things off, we thought we'd start by sharing a bit about our own experiences with accessing adoption records and searching for birth parents. But before we start, let's bring in our guest, Lynsey.
Hi.
Lynsey, thank you for joining us today. Can you start by telling us a little about your journey as an adoptee and what it's been like for you navigating these topics?
So I think it's quite a big thing to think about accessing your records because you're never quite sure what's going to be in those. I actually didn't know that you could access your records up until about 9 years ago. And so I got my records just then. I obviously was adopted quite a while ago, and at that time there wasn't a lot of information that was put into your records. So my file is probably quite small in regards to maybe how some of the people's information is now.
How did you feel when you first saw the records? Was there anything in them that surprised you or stood out?
I was quite glad to get the information. I was surprised at how much information wasn't in it. I thought there would be a lot more about my birth family history than there was. There was just some information about who the main people were and what they kind of like to do and the sort of circumstances that had led to my adoption. I thought there would have been a lot more information about it. I did find out that I have a step sibling who is very similar ages to me, and that was the first time I'd known that information. And that was also the first time that my parents had found that information out as well, because they hadn't been told about that either.
What was your thought process when deciding whether or not to search for your birth parents?
So I've not searched for my birth parents. It's still something that I'm thinking about whether I want to do or not. I suppose ultimately, I think it's a big step to put yourself out there and you never quite know what response you're going to get. Because I've had no contact at all with my birth family from when I was adopted, I feel that it's really quite unknown. Whereas I think now, because people are able to have contact like letters, then that's really important and it can maybe help your decision whether you want to do that or not in the future.
How did accessing your records and learning more about your history affect your sense of identity?
So I think, again, that something that was done when I was adopted was your full name was changed. So I saw my original birth certificate and I feel as though it just felt really strange to look at that, because on one hand it's me, but it's not me, but it is me. So it just feels really strange looking at that. And I suppose it's just trying to come to terms with the information that I didn't know about myself before.
What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about accessing their adoption records or starting a search for their birth parents?
I would definitely say to think about whether this is something that you want to do and not to rush into it. I think that you can access support from Scottish Adoption and Fostering to talk about your feelings about doing that and about getting your record, sort of starting slowly and building up. And I think definitely having a worker allocated to support you through that process, and them doing some of that process will probably be quite good, just in terms of giving you a chance to process everything that's happening.
Thanks for sharing that, Lynsey. It's really interesting to hear your experience. Holly, what about you? What are your thoughts on searching and accessing records?
I don't really need to search for my birth family or my birth parents because I've already met my biological mum and brother, but I do want to find out about my records just to see more about just need to learn about what I don't know, just so that it can it could just maybe explain some things, you know what I mean? It could explain why do certain things, why I feel certain things, and why I react to things differently than other people do. So I just think seeing the records would maybe help that.
And I think that now that you're 16, Holly, you can now access those records, whereas before that you didn't have you weren't able to do that.
Because my mum didn't even have the records either, so it's not like she could have told me anything. So
I think sometimes when you turn 16 and you can access your records, it's quite a big thing. Because Jamie, you were saying your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a difficult time because you're starting to become an adult, but you're not, in the eyes of the law, an adult yet. And then you're also going through school. It's when your exams start. So putting that extra stress on during your exams is just a bit too overwhelming.
And I think you're still trying to figure out who you are as
Yeah.
well. And I think that we've probably all felt different feelings towards our birth families at different ages, and being curious at some points and then being quite content at others. When I was adopted, establishing ongoing contact post-adoption wasn't a thing. So that you didn't get the option to be able to send letters or to even see them after your adoption order was granted. And I know that it's something that I've thought a lot about over the years, and actually really wish I had letters from my birth family, because they would be able to maybe answer some of the questions that I have and to meet the curiosity that I have about them. And I think it would also really impact my decision on whether to meet with them or not, because that door would be open a little bit, whereas at the moment I kind of feel as though it's closed. But I know that my experience is really different to both your experiences, and I think that that's partly why things have changed, but there's still missing a lot of support for keeping contact with birth families. But Jamie, you've had contact with your birth family.
Yeah, when I was about 8, 7 or 8, my mum had sort of got in touch with social work to try and allow contact with my sister, so we would have like a connection and know each other growing up. So it wasn't like a stranger when I was sort of older.
And that was because you had said that was really important to you.
Yeah, definitely. Because I didn't want this person that I'm like fully related to just being a stranger in my life that I'd grown up with until I was about 4. And then as we've sort of grown up, like from about 8 to about 15, 16, it was sort of quite a good relationship. Like we were very similar, with our differences, but other than that, quite a lot of things the same. And then it sort of got to about 17, 18 for both of us. And then we sort of just went our own ways and our lifestyles sort of just changed completely. The things that I want to do in my life are totally different to hers. And
I think that that's quite natural, is that you grow apart and your life evolves and changes as you get older.
yeah,
And I think that that's where you're at, but you've got a kind of established relationship with her that you were able to do throughout your teens. Thanks for sharing that.
that's right.
Holly, what about you?
I had contact. It started off every 3 months, but then it went down to once a year. I had contact since I was adopted, but I just didn't like it because the reason it got put down to only once a year is because it was making me miss out on things that I wanted to do. Like I had like when I was getting like older, like I would get invited to like my best friend's birthday party, but I couldn't go because I had contact. And then I kind of felt stupid like explaining it to folk when they would be like, "Why? What's contact?" And then I would have to explain it.
Just didn't feel that people understood, and you maybe didn't want to have to explain it as well.
And then it was always just like, I think what like annoyed me when I was younger so much about it is I was like, I had this fun exciting thing to do, and then I'm like, and then I get told by my mum, no, actually, sorry, you're doing this instead, and you're doing this more. But then it felt like I was missing out on fun things to do to like sit and talk about something I can't really talk about, because like I was always limited on what I could and couldn't talk about. So it was always like it kind of just felt like I was walking on eggshells with whatever I said, and that the conversation kind of felt like I was speaking like a stranger.
Mhm.
So it was never really like that like enjoyable, and it just made me feel even worse.
Mhm.
And I remember one time I actually tried contact without my biological mum and just my brother, but I don't know what got saved, because then he was like, he just hated me that day. Like, I don't know what it was. We just wanted to try it and see if maybe, because obviously, like, I wasn't speaking much, they wanted to see if I would speak more. And
Mhm.
I did. And my brother just, he must have been a bit like 10 or 11, and I must have been a bit like 7 or 8.
Mhm.
And he was just being sarcastic, being rude, not talking to me, ignoring whatever I said and all that. And then that just felt like it felt like I'd done something wrong
Mhm.
because I was finally speaking. Like,
So it's really hard for you because a relationship has been kept going, but your lives are really different, and so it still feels as though you're talking to strangers. That's really tricky.
what else was like quite confusing is it's like at I did actually enjoy contact at one point because it made me feel like I was like doing the right thing. Like, as much as I didn't want to do it, I was meeting up with them. So then I was like, you know what, I'm going to try and reach out to my biological dad. And I did, and he just ignored it. And that was so weird to me, because it's like my biological family, one side, they're doing everything they can to stay in contact and keep reaching out. And then the other side wants nothing to do
Mhm.
with it. And that's,
It just feels really confusing.
Mhm.
And I think that we've kind of spoke about this as well. It's really difficult because we don't know our birth medical history from our birth families. And so that's always a huge level of uncertainty that we have in our lives that is lifelong.
Mhm.
And that can be a little bit worrying as well.
Mhm. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of We Talk Adoption and Fostering. We hope you found today's discussion helpful. A huge thank you to Lynsey for joining us and sharing her story. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, or if you have a question or story you want to share, please get in touch, and don't forget to follow or subscribe to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time when we talk adoption and fostering.